I'm Josh Cooperman, and this is Convo by Design with a conversation about potential. Potential is designed, it's designed. See what you got on I got design on my mind. It's defined as having the capacity to become something in the future. Think about that. I'll give you 6 seconds. Potential. The most optimistic word in the human language. Next to the word optimism, of course, potential is only an idea until it's activated. Simon Hamui is a Mexico City-based design studio founded by Hamui and works in natural materials like wood, stone, upholstery, and metal for truly unique spaces. Potential, in this instance, refers to both the artisan and his team, in addition to the materials in which they work. Turning a piece of raw natural wood into an artisan cabinetry on a yacht, or earthen pulled stone into a stunning dining room floor. One of a kind works for one-of-a-kind spaces by a one-of-a-kind artisan and studio. This is what we're talking about today with Simon Hamui, and we'll be right back. I am just incredibly proud of this partnership I've got with Thermosol. They have been presenting partners of Convo by Design going on 5 years now, and there is a certain amount of pride that comes with saying that the show is presented by the company that is the best in the world at what they do. Thermosol engineers the most exceptional smart shower products and steam shower systems worldwide, full stop. And it's for a few reasons. First of all, they were the first company to design and patent the technology here in the United States, dating back to 1958. Thermosol, a US-based manufacturer based in Round Rock, Texas, employs an engineering team that designs, tests, and continuously refines the product. Their quality control team tests every single steam generator before it departs the factory. Who else does that? Nobody that I know of. I have the pleasure of working with some world-class designers and architects who tell me, and if you're in the business, you know this, that the idea of luxury has changed, especially when clients want a spa-like bathroom. Steam is mandatory, or it's just not considered a luxury. And if you want to add steam, you have only one true option, my opinion, and that's Thermosol. Mitch Altman, third generation CEO of this family-owned company of 65 years, continues to innovate in the bathroom and shower space through technological marvels such as intelligent showering systems, sound therapy, aromatherapy, technical interfaces, and so much more. And now Thermosol, the industry leader in steam bath equipment and technology since 1958, as I mentioned, is enhancing its already stellar family of products with the new indoor and outdoor luxury saunas, available in 3 designs. The configurations are absolutely amazing, and you should probably go check them out. Indoor and outdoor options. It's amazing. You really do need to check them out. Go to thermosol.com or at Thermosol
One of the
on the
things
socials.
that I love doing is I love obviously I love talking to designers. I love talking to architects, but I also love talking to people who work with their hands, who can create and craft an idea, an image in their head, and turn that into something. Love that. And I love that you work with wood. I too love wood. Wood is one of those things, and I know you work with other materials as well, but wood is one of those things that if you can imagine something, you can generally create it with wood. When did your relationship as a craftsman begin? And sorry, 2-part question. Would you consider yourself an artisan or a craftsman?
I would consider myself more of a craftsman in that sense. I am, of course, talking about wood in particular. It's one of the most ancient materials around that has been forever been, used for its exceptional, transformation qualities that it has, and the materiality of it, and just it. And then there is the intrinsic beauty of the material in itself as well, with its coloring, its hues, its light, and everything that it has within it, its grains, how you manage to work around it. So definitely, it's the core of the materials that pretty much sprang on our shop since I started. I don't know if you know, but I'm an industrial designer in training, and basically what drives me the most is this sheer love for design, for the beauty of design itself, and that's where it all comes out, from this conception from your head, which of course is fed through everyday life, everything that you experience, all of what you see, everywhere you travel, everything has an impact on everyone's self to come up with ideas that you're able then to take bring into life by manufacturing them as well.
Industrial designer in training. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it means I was always I had these I've always had a love for art, and a love for music, very, very strong, a love for music, and architecture, and they're all correlated somehow, they have some common ground that they have in common, I think. And so when I was back in my teen years, when I wanted to decide which path to take, I was really between, doing either a music career or a design career. Okay. And somehow the design fell a little bit more into my hands, being something that I thought it was going to be more practical, and that I could also pursue the music career on the side. But soon enough, I figured out that it was, everything requires, your full, you have to give in fully to whatever you decide eventually. And so it really became on design. I was always infatuated by transportation, by car design. So cars were my thing. All of my young life as a kid, I was always obsessed with cars. And but being from Mexico, and the limits I had with that part of design, automotive design, which was pretty much non-existent in Mexico as such, I turned to the furniture part of design, which was pretty much in hand with all of this thing of architecture, which I always loved as well. So the industrial design became like the logical choice for me, because it handles everything from products to precisely from automotive to everyday products that you are able to do, to furniture, to a lot of things. And then did some courses on architecture as a side when I was at college as well.
Back up a second and tell me about the studio and how that, I find it fascinating, your love of cars. You grew up in Mexico. I grew up in Los Angeles. Definitely a car culture. I feel like I didn't grow up in Mexico, but I feel like Mexico is definitely a car culture as well. And there's this excitement about, I remember when I was a kid looking at a 1973 Porsche, right? I remember the first time I saw one. And then I got the poster. Remember the poster that had every model of Porsche, from the so it had every single car that was on my wall. That was,
I had that too. Yes, exactly the same one. Yes.
That was right above my bed, and it just I could look at that thing for hours. There's something about automotive design that is inspiring and exciting and intriguing, and I find it fascinating too because you can draw that correlation to design, furniture design, interior design, architecture, and design. It's very, very similar. How did that and that inspiration guide you, and how does that manifest itself in the studio?
Well, again, I think that let's say that a big part of how I approach things and what interests me most is like I mentioned before, it's the design, the beauty of the design itself, and from there, it's kind of the form and its emotional connection to myself and to other people, and it's just what a beautiful car does, in shape, just sheer design, the shape of the car, what it can trigger. I have my own stories about my early days with cars. When I saw a first car, I remember in Mexico. In Mexico, it had a very specific scenario where, because in the early 60s, there was they made a law that you couldn't import cars into Mexico anymore. So just they had to meet just some very basic scenarios of costs, and no luxury cars were permitted. Sports cars were also very, very scarce. So all of these brands, they became very, very scarce. It would be very hard to see any large luxury car thing. So everything was on the magazines and on films and everything that you could see. And then there was some people that would import cars as well, to just like probably very well off to do, or politicians that had their way to get the cars into Mexico. But I remember the first time that I saw a 65 Buick in particular, that I was probably like I must have been like 5-6 years old, but I remember it was like this 65 Buick, with the headlights that were covered. It was like the most amazing thing that I had ever seen. So much so that I memorized where I had seen the car. I looked at the facade so there was the architecture involved. I saw the facade of the car, the facade of the building, the house where it was parked, and the street, and I did a memory of it, very, very careful in my mind, because I wanted to be able to go back to see the car in future dates, and then of course that did not happen. The car was probably parked there for a couple of days, or maybe they just kept it out that day and it was really inside the house, inside the garage. Who knows? At the end of the day, when I finally got to see the car again, it became a little bit of an infatuation, you can say, of that. But it was just the impact, the beauty, the design, the emotional thing that it did to me. And then I became hooked to that, to anything that can do that to me. Be art, be a piece of architecture, be a piece of furniture, be anything that can do something to you, to your everyday life, an intrinsic part of your everyday life, that it can just enhance it, just for the sheer beauty, looking at the sheer beauty of it. It's like what drives me.
And sort of back to the second part of that question, how does that manifest itself in the studio and the work that you produce? And I will say this, I have had numerous conversations about this, actually, with a friend of mine, an architect named Anthony Poon, in Los Angeles. And I love his work. And he's also a musician, a very accomplished musician, very talented man. And we have this conversation. I love music too. And I don't possess the ability to be a musician. I have guitars hanging on my wall, and I will pick them up and I will pluck them. I would never let anyone hear the sounds that I could make with these, but there's something about it, right? But in our conversations, I believe that there is a through line, a similarity between the construction of a song, of music, the way that you build music and the way that you build furniture and architecture. I think that there's a similarity there. I think there's a connection there. And I find that interesting. And I'm curious, the studio. So how does that manifest itself with the work that you do, the actual making, the actual designing, the actual fulfillment from mind to hand through materiality to completion?
I guess I don't know. I guess it has to do a lot with that that emotional part that I was talking about, which may be, in some senses, I would say, unconscious. It's more something you develop, and it's like exactly what a piece of music can do to you and how it moves you. And it's a little hard to point down. If you want it to be very, very analytical, yes, maybe the chords and the way that they were put in together and the harmonics and the way that the whole thing can trigger something in you that makes it that makes you respond, just like, I don't know, just to put into perspective here, like the lines of a Mercedes Gullwing, 300 Gullwing, or a Lamborghini Miura can do to you. I mean, you can stare at these things and you just cannot, you're at awe. And again, yes, you can analyze the proportions and what is triggering this amazement for you as you're watching these works of art. But at the end of the day, yes, it's something that is just like kind of inside your body, that just you can connect to it very strongly somehow. And that's how I would say it comes together, this correlation of the music part and then the design part. But I don't think it's something that you have a formula for it, or anything of the sort. It's just like you just part from whatever's coming from the inside of you and going outside. Then the part of the materiality of what you're deciding what to do, when you're doing and when you're choosing your materials for it, that also dictates, and how they can be transformed. That dictates a lot too of how you approach, because I mean, it's not like you can do anything with anything. You have to be very careful to see what you choose. And once you gather that part, it kind of all falls into place. It's a thing. Okay, yes, you're also thinking, okay, this is what I can do with the material, and this is how I can transform it. This is how I can, of my experience, how I can mend them together. And then as you're designing unconsciously, having all of these things in your mind, you're also designing according to that, like already looking into how you're going to be able to produce it. And I was saying that I'm not so much of an artisan and I'm much more of a craftsman, because in that sense, we do use a lot of technology and machinery and all of those sorts of things to transform this. We're not like, and then there are some products that, of course, we do carvings and we do all of this when it requires it. But mostly it's more of we try to do more of an industrial way of transforming. So all of these elements, I think, come into play.
Well, and here's what's so exciting to me about that. And I love conversations like this. The fact that we can be talking about materiality and building and design and construction and of any kind of material, natural or man-made, but still it comes down to that, the essence of the heart and hand, the mind and hand, and how you actually work with it, because that's the difference. I was listening to I heard two interviews separated by a couple of years now that I find so interesting, back to this sort of automotive conversation, which I find fascinating. I heard it was like, I think it was the CEO of Rolls-Royce, when they were talking about their new EV, their new electric vehicle. And they said in the interview on Bloomberg that it was they considered themselves to be pioneers in the field of silent propulsion. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting to me, because we're talking about a vehicle. And then recently, I heard about Ferrari going with an EV, and what they said was, you will still have that same sound that a Ferrari makes, right? So where you have Rolls-Royce, which is this silent propulsion and luxury and design, and then you have Ferrari with, we're going to make it as loud as it ever was with that signature whine, which the sound is part of the experience of a Ferrari, right?
It's a little bit of the soul, yes.
Yeah. And so I take that back to, and I ask the artisan versus craftsman question. I never really thought about it until about, I want to say 7 or 8 years ago, when I reconnected with a friend of mine from high school who became a world-class chef of a restaurant called Rosa Blue in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And he and I went to high school together in LA. And Steve, he would go to Italy for the summers with his grandparents. And his grandparents taught him how to cook. His grandmother taught him how to cook the way that she had learned how to cook. And he said, I'm not an artisan, I'm a craftsman. And I was puzzled by that, because I've always considered any kind of creative to be somewhat of an artisan, right? And he said, no, I don't create new things. I perfect things that will reimagine and reignite an experience that you once had. If you went to Northern Italy and you had cuisine from there that your grandmother made, and then you go to Rosa Blue and you order it, you will get the exact same experience, that exact same flavoring and texture and experience that your grandmother made. And I just thought, that's fascinating. Then I understood the difference between an artisan and a craftsman. So I asked that question because I feel like, and I want your take on this, I feel like sometimes there's an ego issue when it comes to a creator or a creative, that you have to create something new. You can't just be a craftsman and perfect a joint or a cut or something of that nature. When the materiality, the product that you work with, the designers for whom you design, the materials, the products that you make out of the studio, what is the inspiration for the work? Do you work strictly on a commission basis? Is everything custom made for clients and designers? Do you have a retail experience where you will remake the same product and resell it? What's the model, and how did that start, and how is that changing over time?
Okay, well, there's a lot of avenues here for what you posed here. Firstly, on the fact of how, if everything has to be new or not, as a creator, and I am a firm believer that you are what you see, and I mean, you come to this life with a blank page you have absolutely no past knowledge of anything, and everything comes to you by senses of what you're seeing, what you're feeling, everything, absolutely everything. And that shapes you, and that comes together with you. So at the end of the day, you are a mush of all of these experiences, you would say. And of course, I have my own, just as the car designers that I adore, as the architects that I've been incredibly fan of ever since, I started. I could recognize their insignia architectural traits, and based from that, you develop what you like, and you gather your pieces of what you understand, and transform them and make and propose something that is maybe not necessarily like a new thing, but just by choosing materials and then proportions and doing something, it can be resemblance of a language of somebody, at the end of the day, or something that you were attracted to by your learning experience. But at the end of the day, you are putting something that is coming through from your head. It's your head that's putting all of these together, and putting them on paper, at the end of the day. So that would be that part, that's what I believe. So, and as long as, everybody understands this notion of who we are and where we come from, and what we're able, I think that part is not like what you just mentioned about the chef and how his need or his will to recreate this experience. It's completely valid, and completely worth it, because it has a lot of value to it, just by that. So that I would think would be that part of how design is approached. Then you mentioned something else. I just forgot. I got off track. But
about with whom you work, designers, architects, clients, the products.
Yes. Sorry. So yes. So the other part, which is kind of a different, it's just more the operational part. But yes, I'll tell you just really very, very fast how I started out. When I got back from New York, where I did my schooling, I got back to Mexico City, and the very particular part of what Mexico offered to me was the ability to do many things by my own, which is something that is kind of much harder here in the US. But in Mexico, it was much easier to do, meaning that there were a lot of craftspeople, there were a lot of carpenters, a lot of people that do. So just to give you an idea, the way that I started out, I got back, early in my early 20s, and the first thing I saw, I was already in love with furniture, by that time. So I did want to pursue anything that had to do with design and furniture. So my sister had her baby, which was my first, let's say, niece, that I had, and they had to create a bedroom, for her. And so they kind of gave me like, they said, okay, go for it, do whatever you want. And I did this very crazy thing because I had just come out of school, and I did this, multi-level things with futons and slides and things, and very abstract, so that she could live in an environment her scale, and she could move around and go inside little caves and this and that, just imagining like what I would have wanted and how I would feel, and they had a window that looked to the city. So I wanted for her to be able to go up and gaze at the city by herself, like crawl up this slide and go up. Well, anyway, so it went through, it happened, and a lot of her friends liked it. So they started like commissioning me to do bedrooms for their little ones, because all my sister friends were, had just gotten married and they were having kids. So that's kind of how I started. And then, and of course, to be able to do all of this, I found a place not so very far from where I live, but then, kind of in a more shanty town part of Mexico City, where there was this carpenter that worked in its very, very tiny shack. It must have been like, I don't know, maybe it's 50 square feet, with all the floor was, wobblish in concrete. So they only had like 5 square feet, let's say, of level floor. So if you wanted to take a chair and check if it was level, you had to take it to that specific point. Well, anyway, it was a shack. It was a real shack, and they would cut with a saw that they had done themselves. And right beside the shack was this, in the same land was this place where they did, I don't know what they call these, but the arcs that the old trailers used to have for suspension, that they put a lot of flat pieces of steel, and they put them together and they form the arc. This is like, they don't do this anymore, but it was a shop where they would give those type of springs more when they went down, they would, hammer them down to give them the correct curve back again to put them on the trailers. So I would use these guys to do all of my metal work, and so the carpenter would do all my, and I would just hang around, and I got a little, small pickup truck to haul everything as I would take it to their clients, and that's where I would go every day in the morning. I would go and sit around these guys, see what they were doing, checking out my designs, that they would, execute them correctly. And it was a great time, but that was the starting point. And from that, it evolved to more furniture from there. It was word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth. And at one point I began to see that this particular niche of doing custom design and something very specific was a great need. A lot of people had a need to do something custom, and also it allows you to do, to rethink a lot of things when you're doing an interior. You have the possibilities to manufacture a lot of what's going on inside. It's a wonderful tool, because it gives you just so much more flexibility and creativeness, to approach it. So I began doing specific pieces of furniture, and the next thing, somebody told me, do a desk for me for an office, and then do this, and do my dining table, and do this and do that. And so I would do piece by piece, piece by piece. Of course, my operation was so minute because there was only 5 guys in the carpentry and the 2-3 guys in the trailer shop, and that's all I needed. And I did piece by piece, really. Eventually, I got these carpenters we formed an alliance, and they came to work. And so we opened another shop that was a little bit, better. And that's how we evolved eventually, and evolved, so making the place bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. But we never left that part until very recently. Well, not recently. Back in the 90s, we did put out a line of furniture that we wanted to venture out with. So we did this line, and we presented it in New York at the ICFF show that they have every year. And we had good response, but a lot of clients did come out of there. So we started doing some exports of single pieces of furniture, at that time. But and then our need for the custom design started to grow and grow, that eventually what we saw is that we needed to kind of choose what to do, because we didn't have the facility to do both things full on. And it did turn out that the custom design was so attractive, and it did leave us that creativeness, and just every time be doing something new. And it was just, I guess, the market that told us, hey, if you have to choose, I think choose this one. So we let out that part of the production part for some time. And it was just until recently that, now that we're big, and now that we did our good, we have a much better facility now. We have 2 factories that produce a lot of stuff. We decided to reincorporate this mass-produced, semi-mass-produced, let's say, scenario where we have a line of furniture that we're introducing to the market. And the idea is exactly to be able to distribute with other distributors, and for anybody that just wants a product and doesn't need to go through the whole process of a custom design piece, to be able to choose something from that also encompasses a little bit of our spirit and our line and our design and whatnot. So that's happening as we're in the last couple of years now.
You are listening to my conversation with Simon Hamui. We'll be right back.
Design Hardware's newly remodeled showroom is where you will find a gallery-style space with a thoughtful display of products, purposefully positioned to allow unbridled exploration and discovery. High-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware selections are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find your inspiration. collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your shopping list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles.
Man, I love this. I have a new sponsor partner on the show that I want to introduce you to if you're not already familiar with them. If you are a specifying designer, architect, landscape architect, or savvy design enthusiast, if you have heard about the quiet luxury movement, this idea of crafting a lifestyle around understated elegance, simplicity, and sophistication, there's more to it than that. And I will add uncomplicated living. Isn't that what we all strive for? I am extremely happy. I'm really thrilled to share a company that embodies all of this, utilizing proprietary technology and a focus on sustainability in their stunningly beautiful products. It's TimberTech. TimberTech is the premium decking company delivering multi-tonal, color blending, and natural wood textures in a product that is virtually indistinguishable from a natural wood product. What does this mean? It means it's everything wood should be. A beautiful look that blends seamlessly with a well-designed space, providing years of enjoyment and performs the way you want it to. No splintering, fading, peeling, cracking, or rotting. I had a wood deck at our Manhattan Beach home, and I gotta tell you, it was exasperating every year doing the random board flip, taking out nails, resetting them, restaining them. It was a complete pain. It was complicated, and I didn't look forward to it. I wish I had TimberTech, because TimberTech is not only uncomplicated, it's beautiful. It comes in over 20 finish options and 9 collections, and 85% of the material is recycled. This is premium decking for your next project. Learn more and specify it for your next design project. TimberTech on the socials or timbertech.com, where you can find a retailer near you, as well as a number of tools to create, design, order samples, and get the expert help you may need. TimberTech is uncomplicated luxury and performs. It's your choice for your next deck project. Earlier on in our conversation, you had mentioned something about, through lines in the work. And I am a firm believer in that. I think, when you talk to interior designers, some will have a signature style. Generally, newer designers will have a signature style, until they realize that it doesn't matter what their signature style is. It's what the client wants. But you will always see a through line, an essence of them in their work. What do you think are some of the through lines? What is the essence of your work? What is the representation of the work? Because, and I will back up a little bit just for clarification. I think it's fascinating hearing you talk through this idea of having something that is quasi-custom, but still a line that someone can select. Because I think that in the last 4 years, people have really come to this realization and understanding, if you will, that design and furnishings, what you surround yourself with in your home, where you spend the majority of your time, is special. It's an experience. Using furniture, the art of using furniture is an experience. It should be an experience. It shouldn't be transactional. It's unique. Even something like an IKEA, right, which has mass production, there's still an experience through what they produce. And I think that that's so special. So as you craft, create, manufacture, produce, what is the experience? What is the nature of the work? What are the through lines? What is meaningful to you?
Okay, well, again, part of the first question that you were, or what you posed in the beginning, like how do you assess this part of you're ultimately doing what the client is asking for? I think that well, I guess you have to build up a career and your style, let's say, to be able to achieve what I'm going to expose. But in my case, I would say that pretty much like 95% of my work comes through referrals. You know, somebody told me somebody that told somebody that, or they picked it up from somewhere, but it's a referral at the end of the day. And ultimately, the reason they call you is because they liked already what you see, you know, what they saw. If I was to hire, I don't know, Frank Lloyd Wright or or Gio Ponti to do something or whatever, you know, to do an interior of mine, it's because I'm already drawn to his aesthetics and to his way of thinking and what he does. So that is a good filter, because that's the first part. You know, they approach you because they already know and like what you do. So it's not like they're gonna ask you for something that is completely off the charts with your aesthetic. You know, yes, there might be some functionality things and something that poses a challenge for you to adhere to, but ultimately, I have, at least this is in my experience, I normally have a good, you know, broad outlook on what I can do. They let me develop I grasp what their needs, and I go and develop. And normally 9 out of 10 times it goes through, which is great, you know, at the end of the day. So that's with that part of that part of how you encompass design, or how does that part come through. And then the other issues, I guess, is that I like a lot this notion of purity of design. Like, and don't get me wrong, because I'm a fan of Art Deco. The Art Deco movement really resonates with me, because I think the aesthetics are beautiful, and pretty much everything really in its core, when you really think of it, it has its own beauty in it. Even, you know, Art Nouveau pieces, and then all the modernists, you know, also. But I would say that in my line of furniture, I do fall into more this purity of the design, this more, let's say, if you want to put an analogy to it, more of a Mies van der Rohe style of aesthetic, you know, more Carlos Carpa, you know, type of thing with details and how things can come together. You know, Gio Ponti is my sensei. You know, there's nothing that I see that he did that is just okay. Everything's like a masterpiece, you know. So, and to kind of take it from there, you know, really, and then the materiality, like I was saying, the materials also. You choose your materials because if they're easy to source, if they're easy to get, if you understand how you can transform them, if you love what they are, the materials in themselves. Love stones, because I love the way the grains are. Just they're so similar to wood in some senses, you know. So the woods and stones, and then everything that metal can do also to anything, and that's what kind of drives everything, you know, to come together, you know, and put your aesthetics through at the end of the day, what you like and what. But again, I will reiterate, it's really the form what's at the end of everything, you know. It's just the form itself, you know, what drives me the most.
I love that. I really do. And I think it's so interesting now. You know, we're having there's this movement, I feel, that is taking place. And it's really interesting because I think I mentioned to you, you know, I'm from Los Angeles, but I'm currently living in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Tulsa, Oklahoma is firmly implanted and embedded in the Midwest of America, what I used to call the design flyover states, what I still call the design flyovers, because for the most part, Arc Digest, the publications, the trades, the designers here don't really get a lot of attention from mainstream design media. And I think that's because, it has not been considered experimental. It's not New York, it's not LA, it's not Chicago or Boston or San Francisco. And because of that, it is very traditional. But still, there is, like here in Tulsa, there's a community called Lortondale, which is a mid-century modern community, intact. So every single one of the homes that is in Lortondale, this little community, is still the same as it was when it was created and crafted in the 1950s.
Uh-huh.
It's fascinating. You have probably 70 homes. I don't know how many exactly, but there's probably 70 homes. They're all small format homes. They're all mid-century modern. There's 2 community pools. And it has, in the past few years, gotten this incredible attention. And it's rare that one of these homes comes up for sale. And when it does, it's snapped up very quickly. I feel like we're in the midst of this movement where not what's old is new again. I don't think that's the case. I think it's what is strong is new again. The Bauhaus. I am clearly. I think you would say you're probably a fan of the Bauhaus as well.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, I love the Bauhaus idea. I love the movement. Gropius was just the ideas that came out of it, where it was all function. But because of that, the form was an integral part of it. Form follows function, function follows form. Now we're having a debate again about what it means. And I feel like, and I want your take on this, I feel like it's because the experience of furnishings has become, and again, I think this is probably a post-pandemic issue. And by the way, that's not new either. The Spanish flu, 1921, when that pandemic took place, you had almost the same experience going into the Roaring 20s and the Art Deco movement, which begat the modernist, and the modernists flourished. And then you had the mid-century modernism movement. It all seems like history doesn't repeat, but it certainly rhymes. Isn't that yes. the quote?
Yes, exactly.
And I believe that is true. And I'm curious, has that changed, or has that bolstered the way that you design, the way that you think about design? And has that solidified the way that you think about it, or has it changed the way that you design?
There is big changes that are coming, without a doubt. I must say that in my case, very particular, because of my circumstances, I must say, and I must put it out very clear here, that because as I started to grow, because I'm talking about that I started pretty much back in the mid 80s, doing what I was doing, and I would say that even by that time, like for example, I did not have one single computer course in my college years, not one. Okay, computers were like, they were just beginning to flourish. There were, you remember the very big Macs that, the very first Macs, they were just word processors, really. That was what they were, and it wasn't until much later that, design software started to come out, and the integration and how to draw on the computer. But I had been always so intrinsic of drawing, by hand and doing my plans, which is how I learned in school, that I was very reluctant to doing the computer thing, because I just saw it very detached to the go on and just go through it with a pencil, thing that is completely, in your arm and everything, just like a musician with his instrument, at the end of the day. That's it, that's the complete analogy here. And so at the moment that these computers started to, the computer thing started, of course, there were incredible advantages to it. And I began to see that I had the possibility of younger generations help me out with that part. So I always had that help, to put everything into the computer. So even until nowadays, and I must admit, it's not the best and it's not the most efficient way, but I do my drawings by hand. I do my corrections by hand, but it's not a good process, I'll tell you, because it handles sending out the drawings, having somebody transfer them instead of doing it myself, transferring to the computer, then bring them back to me, and then I correct them, and then they do the changes and whatever. But just to put you in perspective, I had a very, very close friend from college, whom I'm very close to still to this day, but he's from France. And when he finished school, he went back to France, and he had no choice. He had to learn, and he became a master in the computer thing. So now he pretty much does everything in his computer, and he's very self-sufficient, and I admire that incredibly from him. But, it was just different circumstances, So I still do that. I still approach my designs by hand, and I like that very much, with the disclaimer that it's not, I wouldn't recommend it. Nowadays, with CNC machinery, with 3D printing, with, processes that are, it's like a whole new ball game that's going to come in to play in the future, in the near future. It actually is coming already, but I think that full on, like in a few years from now, it's going to be there. Possibility, the transformation processes are going to be so much different from what you're able to do now, and we're starting to do that as well. We do have CNC machinery, and we're starting to see, okay, now we can do all of these things with automatization of how to of cutting and transforming, and we're just on the basics. There's so much things with maybe with all the the 3D printing that can do something from nothing to creating your project. It's going to be, you're going to be able to 3D your product at home.
But let's talk about that, because I'm curious how that makes you feel. You talk about in the mid 80s, this is such a Hollywood moment. It's funny. I was on a game show when I was a kid and won a full set of Britannica, Encyclopedia Britannica, the whole Britannica encyclopedia set. And that, through that's how I learned to do research. I didn't have a computer until I was in my 20s.
Yes.
For work. And that's how I learned to do my research. If you put a set of encyclopedias in front of a Gen Z student today and said, okay, I need you to do a research project using nothing but this, their head would explode. They wouldn't know how to do it. It's a skill set that has been, I don't want to call it lost. I just want to call it's been replaced, because it's much easier to do it via the computer. But because of that, you learn or you lose that skill. So now you have a CNC machine, you have a 3D printer, you have AI, which then can sort of take an idea of design this furniture in the style of Bauhaus, but make it out of pecan, so adjust for certain grain, more a tighter grain versus a white oak, which has a different grain. So, but you can craft and create something out of that as a craftsman yourself, with a flair for the artistic. How do you feel about that? And does that lead to a potential future loss of creative types?
it's something to be seen, you know. I think it's still in its very early stages, so it's kind of hard to predict what it's going to do. But just to put an example, a quick example, for example, you know, there hasn't been any as far as I know, there hasn't been any artificial creation of natural wood or natural stone, for that matter, because there is so much inside the material itself, you know, everything that has not only with the grain, but how it captures light and how it can change from, you know, as you're walking through, and the depths of the materials, that somehow it hasn't been able to be achieved, you know.
But you do have lab grown diamonds.
You do have lab. I don't know anything about the lab grown diamonds in terms of if there are undistinguishable from real diamonds, you know. I only know about, you know, the artificial stones, and I know about the artificial woods that are out on the market, and they try to be, yes, they haven't reached it, but that doesn't mean they'll eventually get it. I don't know how, but maybe they'll eventually get it. Yeah,
it's almost not so much the material itself, but what the craftsman or artisan does with the material. And so I'm a woodworker. Yes. I'm not on your scale of a woodworker by any stretch. I'm a wood turner. And I can tell you, you know, we've talked about a couple of things. We've talked about grain and music. You know, if I've got a piece of spalted pecan on the lathe and my tools are sharp, my music's good, I'm feeling great, and I can watch the chips. I can watch the chips fly. I can hear that sound. It's a purity in the sound of carving through. I can feel like a hot knife through butter, right? Yeah. Or I can have a piece of white oak that may still be a little bit moist, and it's got that punky smell to it. Yes, you know what I mean? That moist white oak smell. But totally. You can, if you're doing end grain or side grain, you can still see it fly off. Or there's the days that are just terrible, and I can't hollow, and I can't seem to get a cut right, and it's not the materiality of it. It's the artistry that comes from the work itself. Yes. And I'm just curious. And that kind of, you know, it kind of leads me into my final question for you, and sort of the last thing I wanted to ask you about, because I find your story fascinating. I love your work. I love the work that comes out of your studio. I've loved this conversation. What is the legacy? What is your, you know, and especially because when somebody starts a studio, when somebody has an eponymous studio, you have to at some point think about, you know, what does that mean for the long-term life of the legacy? How do I want my studio to carry on with other artisans? How would I like it to be? How would I like it to look in the future? How would I like to be remembered as the founder of this studio? What does that mean to you, and what would you like it to represent?
Well, ultimately, I think from the fact that you are producing goods, you know, you are producing objects at the end of the day. They do have an end user, you know. It is, you know, a people to people, you know, thing, you know. It's them calling you, you producing to them living with your product at home. That it's ultimately this feedback that you get from your end user that is what's the most fulfilling and the most the word doesn't come to me right now, but it would be noble, you know, of the whole experience of that. And I think that's part of what not only keeps you going, you know, but that's a good legacy to live around, you know, when somebody can tell you that they just really enjoy what you did for them for their home. And even if they can't explain why, you know, actually, better because it's like just inside them, but it can be a number of things. It can be its functionality, it can be its visual impact, it can be what it does, like what you said, your everyday thing that you have in your home and that you see every day, and just the shape, and when you sit on it and feel it, and the temperature of it, and just the texture of it, and everything, it all plays into there. And I think that's kind of the thing of the legacy. I think, it's why, I don't know, this Nakashima, for example, George Nakashima, it's like I went to his studio not too long ago, for the first time, and I was just blown away completely at his, of course, I knew his furniture from a very long time ago, but just being in his studio, seeing if you haven't been there, I would urge you to go. I would urge you. It's somewhere in Pennsylvania. That is, it's a gem, a true gem. And you would adore it. I mean, like nothing else, like nothing. So anything from there to seeing, like, in Wendell Castle furniture, which is like, that borders into art and furniture and whatnot. It really blurs any distinction there, because he was the master, of recent master of woodworking, I think, in a lot of senses. That I think that's what ultimately keeps you on your track, and as long as you can keep that spirit, in that humanly part, maybe we can beat off this AI intervention. But you never know, because this thing might get so powerful that they will be able to emulate anything that a human being can do. I don't know if it's going to get to that. I know that it's not there. Still, it's not there. So I'm very confident and hopeful that for some years here we have something secured with that part of the legacy. And as long as there is people that do grasp this, and do connect to this, to everything that you're saying, and especially this poetic thing that you were talking about, lading the wood and hearing how the chips come out, and seeing how, as you're moving your chisel, this thing is suddenly transforming in front of your eyes. I mean, it's nothing less than magic at the end of the day. It's like that. It's something to get hooked on, completely. And as long as you get that connection with other human beings, that will, I think it'll last, hopefully.
I love that. Simon, thank you so much for taking the time today. I loved this conversation. It was great meeting you. I love your work.
Thank you so much, and my pleasure. I hope it was fulfilling as well. It was for me, for sure.
As a busy professional designer, you know how important it is to find the right partnerships. Partnerships that allow you to specify the right products for every project. Professionals like you don't just have time to sit around and waste, right? So let me tell you about one of my partnerships. Pacific Sales is here to serve you with expert, knowledgeable, and non-commissioned professionals to help you specify the right product for all your projects. Non-commissioned. That means their only incentive is your satisfaction. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, a Best Buy company, has just that, with over 60 years of service in Southern California. Pacific Sales is your destination for exploration, advice, and inspiration. And you will find all your favorite brands, like Monogram, and their commitment to providing exceptional products, starting with materials. Monogram sources commercial-grade stainless steel on their refrigerators, unscratchable sapphire glass on their cooktop knobs, durable marine-grade bearings on their dishwasher racks. Monogram takes inspiration from the leading-edge materials used in the high-end automotive and aeronautics industry to provide you with lasting beauty and exceptional quality. The beauty is backed by the same level of attention to performance, which is why Monogram appliances are trusted and sought after by chefs all over the country. Chain-driven French oven doors that can be opened with one hand, and an industry-exclusive hearth oven that allows for all-electric indoor brick oven-style cooking without the need for external ventilation. These are just a few of the things that make Monogram so special.
Pacific Sales features Monogram appliances, and Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home team is here to help you and offer their Pro Rewards program, which is a trade program unlike any you have experienced before. And here's the cherry on top: access. Access to exclusive builder trade incentives from top brands like Monogram. Visit a Pacific Sales showroom today to learn how you can unlock additional savings and benefits. Don't miss out on the opportunity to work with the best of the best. Visit Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home today and elevate your projects to new heights. Pacific Sales Kitchen and Home, where excellence meets expertise. Thank you, Simon. I enjoyed our conversation immensely. Thank you to my partner sponsors, Thermosol, Pacific Sales, TimberTech, Monogram, and Design Hardware. These partners are amazing companies who have made a concerted effort to support the design community through incentives, education, media, events, and exposure, not to mention a collection of extraordinary products and services to match. Check the show notes for links to each of them so you can see firsthand how they make your design business thrive and your projects exceed expectations. Thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing the show. Thank you for sharing the show with your friends and colleagues. Thank you for your emails, show, and guest suggestions. Please keep them coming. Convo by Design at Outlook.com and on Instagram at Convo by Design with an X. Until the next episode, be well and take today first.